So just to start, Dad, if we look at things in terms of a definition now, what is worry in a psychological sense?
Okay, well, worry is a chain of anxious thoughts. So it's a chain of thoughts. It's about the future and where there's a purpose of focusing on what might go wrong in the hope of reducing some threat or danger. So it's future oriented. It's looking ahead in an anxious kind of way, one thought after another, and we're trying to figure something out to help ward off some kind of threat or danger.
I can imagine that's not necessarily the most uncommon thing in terms of people quite often try and think ahead to stop themselves getting into a tricky situation at times. So what's the difference between worrying about something and maybe just thinking it through?
Okay, well, it's going to be partly the extent to which we focus on the worry and the impact it has on us. And one way of thinking about this is that there's a relatively common anxiety disorder called generalized anxiety disorder. It would affect about 3% of people in any particular year and 6% of people at some stage of their lives, and we define it in this way. Actually, it's got a little mnemonic to it. It's, does Mr. Fisk, F-I-S-C, worry excessively about minor matters? Now, Mr. Fisk, 6 letters relate to 6 symptoms of generalised anxiety disorder. And it's whether we have worry more days than not over a 6-month period, and whether we have at least 2 of these 6 symptoms more days than not over a 6-month period. M is muscle tension. R is restlessness. F is fatigue. I is irritability. S is sleep problems. And C is concentration problems. So that gives us a clue that if we're worrying about things a fair bit, it's going to have an impact physically on us. On things like our sleep, it'll affect our thinking, like our concentration, it'll affect our well-being through irritability, sleep, muscle tension, that kind of thing. So it does really tend to impact then on mind and body. And that's an example of when things have got to a more troublesome point. So I suppose like when we look at other kind of anxiety-related reactions, it's the extent and the persistence of how much it affects our mind and our body and how we go about things.
And so we spoke a little bit last week when we were talking about phobias, about how we can group the different types of phobias. Is that a little bit the same with worry in terms of you can group them in terms of maybe it's a threat of physical injury as opposed to kind of material loss as opposed to health concerns? Does it help to think about things in this way?
Look, I think that with worry, we tend to look more at the pattern of worrying itself and how it can get excessive. And we'll talk later on about how people can become overly wedded to the idea of worry being a helpful way of looking to sort out problems. But the range of problems that people worry about, including with generalised anxiety disorder, they tend to be also the kind of things that any of us are going to be concerned about at times. Like one example is our physical health. Being concerned about our health, not just our own, but say family members and the health of friends. We might be concerned about finances, how things are going around our house or our home. Maybe some relationship conflict might come up and maybe demands that we have on us. We can worry about them being too much. And say for generalised anxiety disorder, it's when we worry about not just one thing that might be a major kind of problem, it's when we have a pattern of worrying about at least 2 of these things quite regularly over that 6-month period. And so we also might have a tendency then to worry about minor things, or at least excessively worry about any of these issues, so it's actually not so productive.